Hello, everyone. It is 414 day in Milwaukee. 414 because it's April 14th, and 414 because our area code is 414. So, what better way to celebrate 414 day in the middle of Passover than talking about someone who could escape from anything and could, even probably make Passover seem less challenging or, make all of the matzah and potatoes seem exciting. None other than Harry Houdini. And Harry Houdini, I am thrilled to talk about Harry Houdini with you guys all today. Last fall, we had a fabulous exhibit that was on loan from the Jewish Museum of Maryland called Inescapable, The Life and Legacy of Harry Houdini. And when we heard about this exhibit at the museum in Baltimore, we were so excited to bring it to Milwaukee because we knew Houdini had these fabulous Wisconsin roots, and we knew there was a Milwaukee connection, but we used this opportunity to really go much deeper on Houdini's Wisconsin and Milwaukee specifically connections. So some of the places in which this research took us was to the museum at the castle in Appleton. It is an awesome museum and part of their permanent collection. There is always a Houdini exhibit. And it really does include many of the things that we showcased in in the traveling exhibit that we borrowed and the things that we augmented. And then we also borrowed some things from the Wisconsin Historical Society, which I'll show you a bit of that today. So I'm really excited on 414 Day to celebrate Houdini in Milwaukee. So Houdini was born, although he didn't admit this, he was born in Hungary, and he moved to the United States when he was 4. His father had received a position as a rabbi in Appleton. And I think about this every time, just how complicated and how challenging that must have been to go from Hungary to Appleton and, with little changing or just moving across country with, just a letter of introduction. And at first, things in Appleton are really, really great. There is amazing opportunities for the family there. They're pretty successful. They're affluent. This is a good place for the Weiss family. His original name is Eric Weiss. But things go downhill. And Rabbi Weiss, Harry Houdini's father was a rabbi, starts having some sort of dispute. And historically, there's a little bit of a challenge here in terms of what happens. One longtime prevailing theory was that Houdini's father was kind of old world and Appleton was looking for a more modern English-speaking rabbi. However, the next rabbi who comes to Appleton is also a German speaker like Rabbi Weiss and doesn't seem to be any more modern than Rabbi Weiss was. So a newer prevailing theory is that Rabbi Weiss was kicked to the curb because he wasn't German enough for the population. They were from Hungary, while it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and was a German-speaking enclave. It wasn't a German district, a German proper area. And so let's kick Rabbi Weiss to the curb. So the family moves to Milwaukee. And at this point, Eric, as he was called, is about 8 years old. And he says that the less said about Milwaukee, the better. It was a terrible place for the family. And I want to share a few pictures with you to kind of reflect that. Oops. These are from our exhibit. And I'm going to go to that screen right now. And hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing at this point. But this is the image from that exhibit. The things that are challenging for the family is that they earn increasingly less money. We'll talk about that in a bit. But they also have the challenge of where they're going to live, how they're going to live, all of these sorts of things. They move 5 times in less than 4 years. Each of these places is significantly worse. And as the family is getting worse and worse and worse financially, it's also a place in which Eric discovers magic. His first magic show is at a place called Jacob Litt's Dime Museum. And Jacob Litt's Dime Museum is literally what it says. You pay a dime, you go in and see the oddities. It's similar to like the P.T. Barnum like sense of what you're going to get if you go to a show, a sideshow. And sometimes they have high culture offerings, and sometimes they have lectures, and sometimes they have bearded ladies and tattooed men and things like that. And in this case, if you look at the bottom here, and I'm going to try and make it bigger. Let's see if I can. If you look down here, this is where having a mouse would probably be helpful. The piece that he goes to see is this right here, Dr. H.M. Robinson, the wonderful vivisectionist who, in full view of the audience, cuts men to pieces and restores them back to life. So he's doing a little bit of that thing that you've seen probably a million times where the magician saw someone in half. Now, Harry Houdini was so taken by this that he actually later in life buys this trick from the person he thinks he saw do this, a guy named H.S. Lynn. H.M. Robinson is actually a copycat. Later in life, Harry Houdini takes a hard stance against copycats where he would go and expose them in front of their entire audiences if they were taking on his tricks as the handcuff king or something like that. But in this case, he actually was he was taken. He had seen an imitator of a more popular trick, and he ends up copying, and he ends up later buying the real trick. So this was his introduction to magic. Voila, very exciting. The next kind of big thing in Harry's progression as a magician is that he performs here for the first time. He performs with a guy that he meets as a newsboy for the Milwaukee Journal named, at that point, it is not his future stage name, but his stage name is Adonis Ames, and he becomes a famous vaudeville entertainer, and a performer of a contortion act. You can see his pieces right here. If I could get them back. Let's just leave them small. You can see him upside down, backwards, inside out. And Adonis Ames was from Wauwatosa, and they perform together at the Wisconsin Street Bridge at Wisconsin and Water. And the first thing that Eric, at that point, Airy, King of the Air, does is a trapeze type act with acrobatics. He works at the Plankington Hotel. He works as a shoeshine boy. He works as a newspaper delivery boy. And all of these different fields teach him important lessons in his future showmanship. The bigger tip you get, the more newspapers you sell, the more you get when you're delivering things to the hotel, is the more show you put into something, the more you can do with things with pizzazz. And it really serves him well. He also learns to swim in the Milwaukee River. That is his intro into swimming and holding his breath underwater, which became a key to many of his escapes, especially those where, he's locked in a Chinese torture cell, something like that. But as I said, the family had really challenging circumstances here. One of the things we discovered, and this was an amazing moment at the UWM library, is this document, which was in a larger book, a ledger from the Hebrew Relief Society. And the Hebrew Relief Society today would be Jewish Family Services. Jewish Family Services continues to support the needs of Jews and non-Jews in Milwaukee. And right now they are running all sorts of programs to help people in need throughout our city. And if you look here at the very bottom, as I hide this, right here in the middle, Mrs. S.M. Weiss, right there, she is given a half a ton of coal and $3 from the Hebrew Relief Society to ensure that she can support her family. So the family is in such dire need of assistance that they are now going to get aid from the only place they can, the Jewish community. At one point, very soon after this, Harry runs away from home. He actually runs away twice from Milwaukee. Once he runs away to Delavan, and he ends up trying to join the circus there. Another time we can talk about circus culture in Delavan. It's a fascinating story, but there were at one time over 100 circuses in Wisconsin, and this was really the center of circus life in America. Later on, he tries a more advanced runaway and he runs away to Galveston, Texas, where he again is going to join a circus. And this is a letter that he sends to his mother. Let's see if I can enlarge it without going too big. Yeah, there we go. And this letter that he sends to his mother from Galveston, where he says, "Dear Ma, I'm going to Galveston, Texas, and will be back in about a year." He's 12 at this point. "My best regards to all. Did you get my picture? If you didn't," and he sends that she should contact the circus in Illinois. "Your truant son, Eric Weiss." So he runs away. He actually says this letter is from the National Archives. He had submitted it to the National Archives to be a sign that this would be, this was like what his handwriting looked like. And under it, he says he never makes it to Galveston. He ends up in Missouri and stays there for a while and then comes back. His family at one point later then moves to New York, where he continues to work and have a job. And that is where he really breaks into magic. But I think without his life in Milwaukee, there would not have been a Harry Houdini as we know Harry Houdini. You know, he needed the background of the kind of training in entrepreneurship and showmanship. He needed the understanding of, you know, a magic show from Jacob Lotz Museum, and he certainly needed to learn how to hold his breath. So on 414 Day, I am here to tell you that Milwaukee was central to Harry Houdini's identity as a magician. Thanks very much for joining us today, and we hope to see you Friday. We're off on Thursday for the holiday of Passover, but Friday we're going to be exploring a different Harry Sorath, and the Master Lock, which actually ties in a little bit to Harry Houdini. So 2:00 on Friday, and if you love these, please feel free to make a small contribution to the museum. We appreciate all of your support.